Welcome to the Alex Merced cast, where Alex Merced of alexmerced.com brings you principled, thoughtful, libertarian commentary on issues that matter.
Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com, and you're listening to the Alex Merced cast. So I'm going to continue going down the list of questions you guys have sent me. So the first question I had was basically they wanted to talk about libertarian movies and what movies are libertarian. I'm not a big expert on which movies I would say are like overtly libertarian. I mean, there is the Atlas Shrugged movies, which are of varying quality. They weren't as bad as I think everyone thinks they are. The problem is that it's not theatrical quality movies that did get a theatrical release, but they're all right for what they are. But most libertarian pop culture really is in books. Whether it's Ayn Rand with her books, which the only one that I've personally read was Anthem. I read that in like sixth or actually I think ninth grade. And that really did have a profound effect on the way I think. That really got me thinking about individualism and ego and things like that. I really did enjoy that. And I think it's a great introductory book, fiction book for that, because it's short, it's quick, unlike a lot of her other books, which are much, 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 much longer. Which I think basically the other three, I think there's only three more, We the Living, Fountainhead, and Atlas Shrugged. And then a lot of other nonfiction stuff she wrote. But there's that Robert Heinlein, who wrote a load of science fiction books. Okay, I've read through most of Stranger in a Strange Land, which is a lot of fun. I really did enjoy that book, and there is a lot of libertarian sentiments through the book. The books are really a story. The fiction book should be just a good story, but he definitely works in a lot of his sort of how he has libertarian characters throughout the stories that help drive a few libertarian points home here and there. There's a lot of modern authors I'm less familiar with. There's the Tuttle Twins for little kids by Connor Boyack, and then Robert Murphy also wrote some children's books, and my friend Dory Girkman, she wrote little of the series Little Libertarians, which are for really young kids. So if you have a baby or a toddler and you want to buy them some books, go check out the Little Libertarians books. So those are all great libertarian pop culture. There's also comics, okay? Basically, you have the Johnny Rocket Launchpad. So basically, or Space Force, or was it called Rocket Force, I think it was. I was one of the sponsors of the first issue, and I am a sponsor of the second issue whenever that gets released. But that's something that Liberty Force, that's what it was, Liberty Force. That is a really cool comic. The first issue was really good. And then there is Eric July, of course, with the band Backwards, which is awesome. And you have lots of other libertarian musicians. But libertarian movies, you have a lot of movies that you can take libertarian ideas from, but none that sort of really stand out in my head at the moment. But you know what? Maybe there's a room for someone to write some really good fiction that turns into some really good movies. Okay? So that's the first question. Monopolies. Okay, so where the question was going here is where someone was concerned about a more libertarian world. If you start getting rid of regulations, how would that help you deal with the monopolies? Which I think people have a fundamental misunderstanding of how the monopolies kind of came into existence in the first place. Oftentimes it's because of the regulations. Because generally what happens, you have a successful business, okay, you might have several entrants in this market, but when you start, what happens is that the government will start to initially regulate them, and then the business itself will get involved in the writing of this regulation, which it has to, because if you're going to write rules, you don't want rules being written by people who don't understand what they're writing rules on. So you have to kind of end up getting people who are involved in the industry to help you figure out what the right rule is. But oftentimes what happens is the rules are written in a way, because people who are going to have the most influence are going to be the big players, they write the rules in a way where basically large-scale firms can kind of absorb the cost pretty readily, but smaller entrants can't. So then what happens is that all the smaller companies, all the smaller competitors in that sector end up failing or oftentimes being bought out. Okay, like in the financial industry, the regulations are so tight that a lot of the main functions that every broker-dealer used to do for themselves have been outsourced to what's called a clearing firm. And the clearing firms are really all the older, really bigger broker-dealers, because they're already big, they can absorb the cost, and now this clearing for other firms, basically handling all those operational aspects and regulatory aspects, has become a huge profit center for them, making them even bigger. And basically every new firm that jumps into the market just makes them bigger, because basically at the end of the day, all the business really goes through the big firms, and you're starting a new firm, you're really just becoming a salesperson for the bigger firm, because they're really doing everything in the back end. So very few firms actually ever grow to a size that's comparable. Sometimes, but oftentimes they have to be really innovative. So it's much harder to get competition, which means those larger firms end up taking more and more market share, which gives them more economic and political power, creating that sort of monopoly situation. Oftentimes, absent the regulations, then what happens is you have more competitors. And you don't need one big competitor. You can have lots of small competitors that, basically if you had 30 competitors or 50 competitors take 1% market share apiece, that's still half the market. Okay, competition doesn't have to be from one dominant player, but there has to be those other players need to be able to function in that market. So a lot of monopolies exist oftentimes because of government regulation and taxation that oftentimes hits the smallest players hardest. And those smaller players would grow to bigger players if they were allowed to survive a little bit longer, but they can't now that these taxes and regulations were imposed. And for the third question, compensation and effort. So the basic idea here was, if we used profit-based compensation, would that suddenly improve people's compensation or their effort going forward? Now, here's the thing. To the extent there's what's called there's marginal benefit, in the sense that as you keep increasing someone's income, the incentive starts to diminish over time. Okay, it's like anything else. The first dollar you give me is going to incentivize me a lot more than the millionth dollar you give me as part of my paycheck. Not that I won't necessarily be incentivized by that millionth dollar. So basically the idea here is, if people got paid based on profits, basically if people were, we started paying labor contracts that are based on the profits of the company, would that incentivize? Sure. The question is that necessary? Is that a cost that's sufficient for the increased benefit in productivity? So if I give you $10 worth of the profits, but your productivity only increases by, let's say, $5 worth of productivity, then that costed the business $5. Okay, there was basically we lost $5. We didn't gain anything. So also, by giving you a piece of the company, by giving you a share of the profits, there's less profits for me to share with future investors if the company needs capital to make some sort of large investment. So again, there's not. You can set things up that way, but there's trade-offs. There's just things that you give up when you do that, and the question is it worth giving those things up in that particular business? So that's why you want a free market. You want people to be able to decide what are sort of the best arrangements that work for them, and if they choose arrangements that don't work very well, they'll suffer problems and have to either change or die, and that's kind of how it works. So those are the 3 questions for this week. I will see you guys again next week. Again, if you guys like what I have to say, go to alexmerced.com, click the donate button, or just go to donate.alexmerced.com. You guys have a great day. Enjoy. I'll see you guys later on.
Thank you for listening to the Alex Merced Cast. Learn more at alexmerced.com, libertarian101.com, and libertarianwingmedia.com. Follow Alex Merced on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.